hello, and welcome back to another episode of Happiness by Habit, where we explore the mindset, shifts, practical habits, and bold actions that help us lead with more clarity, joy, and purpose. I am your host, Silvana Pimentel, and in today's episode, we're going to talk all about rising above the chaos and lead with impact. My guest today is someone who lives and breathes leadership transformation, the one and only Robert Heath. He is a keynote speaker, best-selling author, CEO, and Chief Vision Officer of the Legacy Leadership Consulting Group. With over 2 decades of experience building powerful learning strategies and coaching purpose-driven leaders, Robert helps people turn confusion into clarity and to elevate their teams, even when the path forward might seem messy. Welcome to the show, dear Robert.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure being here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. I would love to start with your story. Let's start there. What was the moment or experience that sparked your passion for empowering leaders and building legacy-driven business?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there's a number of different parts of the story that stick out, but the main one was actually when I found myself feeling like I was failing, feeling like I was on the outside, everything looked good. Everybody felt like I was doing well. But I remember my wife tapped me on my shoulder and she said, "Hey, I didn't get married to be a single parent." And that was one of those moments where it was like, wait a minute, I'm working hard, right? At the time, I'm a United States Marine Corps officer. I'm a company commander. I'm taking care of my Marines, taking care of serving our country, doing all the rest of that. In my mind, I'm doing everything for my family. My family's taken care of. So if I'm not home or when I'm home, if I'm busy, all the rest of that, that wasn't a big loss in my mind. Mm-hmm. And then my wife explained it. She was like, when you're here, you're not even really here. Like, you're not really present. Your mind is still at work. And she explained it. She said, it'd be different if you were deployed. If you were in Iraq or Afghanistan, like, you not being here, we understand. But your office is 5 miles away from our front door. Like, it doesn't make sense that we don't see you and that you're not around enough. And I didn't realize at the time that working hard wasn't enough. All I thought was if you just work hard, right? As a professional, as long as I'm working hard towards something good, everybody will understand, everybody will see. And I saw that I was failing at home and being able to be there for my family and be able to take care of that. And that was the moment that I realized I had to change something. I had to do something different. And in that moment, I started looking at how I was dividing my time and I was trying to chase the work-life balance myth, right? Where you try to balance everything out and you try to give enough on this side and give enough on that side, but it's really, you're disintegrating yourself. And it's, in my opinion, I believe it's a myth. It's like the Loch Ness Monster or like the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. It sounds nice, but it doesn't really exist. And so I started.
I know exactly what you're saying. I can relate.
That part, right? And so I started working instead towards work-life harmony. And, when I think about the idea of harmony, it's an integration of things, right? When you think about harmony, like in music, you've got different notes that sound good on their own, but when you put them together, there's a resonance that happens. There's a vibration that happens that's different and that's new, that didn't exist before they came together. And so when you have work-life harmony, your life actually starts to amplify every part of your life. So your work amplifies your life and your home amplifies your community work, and your community work amplifies your work. And it continues in this virtuous circle. And so I started on that path trying to figure that out for myself, to figure out how I can be all the things that I want to be, because I wanted to be a good Marine. I wanted to be a good professional. I wanted to be a good father. I wanted to be a good husband. I didn't want to feel like they were competing anymore. Mm-hmm. And once I figured that out, right, I got to the point where I was getting my work done, most of my work done before lunch. And that allowed me to open up a jiu-jitsu gym where I could have my kids doing jiu-jitsu while I was teaching other people jiu-jitsu. And I was still a very successful Marine Corps officer. And I was able to hang out with my wife and do the things that I wanted to do. I freed up so much more time mastering my time. And that was when I started realizing that other people were suffering with the same thing. When people would ask me things like, when do you sleep? Because they would listen to all the stuff that I did. They were like, when do you sleep? And I'm like, I get plenty of sleep every day. Like, I have plenty of time to do the things that I want to do. But it was by reorganizing how I focused my priorities instead of trying to balance them, integrating them. So that was kind of the genesis of me wanting to help other leaders with this, but this journey actually started a lot earlier, but we can talk a little bit about that a little bit later.
I love your story, Robert. I think many people can relate to that one because a lot of times we have so many things in our plate and we try to do it all, but there feels many moments where we can't and we fail and we fail a lot of times. We fail the people that we love the most, the family is typically the first ones to be affected by this. So I did go through an experience like that too, but and I know exactly how you feel. But I loved your story. So let's talk a little bit about how you turned chaos into clarity. What were the first few steps that you took, and so that leaders can also do the same?
Yeah, no, and this goes back to kind of a little bit of the backstory, right? Part of the reason why I was even in the Marine Corps and why I had done the work that I did when I grew up, I'm from Chicagoland area, originally south side of Chicago. And so I grew up, and I always say I grew up kind of hood adjacent. I wasn't in the hood, and my parents made sure we went to good schools, even if we had to use my grandmother's address to make sure we could go to a good school. Like, we didn't go to school in the neighborhoods necessarily that we lived, but I got to see two different worlds. I got to see the world in the schools that I went to where there were international baccalaureate and AP programs and all the rest of that. And then I got to see the world where there were 50% of kids not graduating and people going to prison and all the different things. And I knew that there were differences, and that it shouldn't be that way, that there should be some way that we could change the urban problems of kind of generational poverty and the school to prison pipeline and things like that. I went to school really trying to understand money, trying to understand how to fix it. So I got an economics degree, I got a speech communications degree, and then I eventually went and got my teaching degree. And so, fun fact, I was a Spanish teacher for 6 years. And so I taught
¿Hablas
Spanish.
español? Ah, mira, qué bien. Okay, excellent.
But so I taught Spanish, and I was on my pathway to becoming a superintendent. That was my goal, and I was going to fix school systems in urban areas and help kids who didn't have opportunities get opportunities. And I saw a superintendent who basically was me in 20 years. It was this weird kind of serendipitous event where she was from Memphis City School. She had graduated from the Memphis City school system. I was teaching in Memphis at the time. She had come back. She was superintendent. She had all the letters behind her name. She had all the qualifications. She had the degree. She had everything she needed. And I believed that the program that she had would work. I was one of the people that was a believer, right? So I thought that she knew what she was doing. I thought that she had the ability to do it. I thought that she could lead the group. And 18 months later, she wasn't there anymore. And it wasn't because of corruption. It wasn't because of any, malfeasance or anything like that. It was because she didn't have this thing that I didn't even know she didn't have, which was the ability to lead the people from where they were to where they needed to be. There was a lot of pushback, a lot of opposition, a lot of that. And I thought that she would have been able to get everybody on board. But I saw so much that happened, and it let me know that it was like, oh, that's me in 20 years if I don't learn how to lead better, if I don't understand this leadership thing. So now fast forward, I go, and there's two places that I went to really learn and understand how to lead people. The first one was to understand the systems and the levers of power and how we govern ourselves. And so I went to law school to really understand our system of government. How does our social contract work? How do we make our laws and our rules that govern how we act? But then the second thing that I did is I went to the United States Marine Corps, which I feel like is the best leadership training academy in the world. And I became an officer. And in that span, I learned a lot about leadership. But one of the things that I also got to see is I got to see a lot of leaders that were suffering, right? And something that shifted, right? Even for myself, something that shifted was this belief that I had before that if you were a bad leader, it was because you didn't care about people, or you didn't work hard enough, or you were just interested in power, right? In my mind, I thought that that's where bad leaders came from. It was because they were, they had bad intentions. They were bad people, and people suffered under bad leaders. And what I learned is that there are a lot of leaders that care a lot about people, that work insanely hard, and that are always working for the greater good, but they're still struggling, and they're not actually being able to be successful in their leadership. And during my journey, I began to see that not only was I able to overcome kind of my stint in that, right, while I was working hard and trying to do everything, but my wife was letting me know that I was failing. I was able to figure it out for myself, but I also learned that because I had my skills as a teacher, and because I was able to do it myself, I was pretty good at helping other people to really understand how to overcome the roadblocks that were in their way to teaching or in their way to leading. And so that's really how legacy really came to be. And one of the things that I found out was that the first thing that leaders have to be able to do is they have to master their own time. Because if it feels like you're always on a hamster wheel, right? You always just have to work harder, but you never really get there. There's a couple of things that happen. Number one, you're not really able to pay attention to the effects of what you're doing, right? I didn't know that I wasn't being present at home because I was just working so hard, trying to do it, trying, right? But as the great wise and wise Yoda once said, there is no try, there is only do or not do, right? And so many of us are focused on our intentions and focused on the fact that we're trying, that we stop paying attention to the results. And so I teach my leaders to make sure that they're focused on how do you thrive in the chaos? How do you ensure that you're defining success and then that you're judging yourself based on whether or not you're hitting your marks or whether or not your results match your intentions? It's not enough to have good intentions. You actually have to have good results. That means that you're a good leader.
Yes, 100% agree with you. What does leading with legacy really means, and how can leaders start building that kind of impact even when they feel stuck? Because a lot of leaders feel stuck.
Yeah. So the biggest thing with legacy is that it's not about you, right? People have to remember that when you're leading others, it's about their results. It's about what happens with them. As a matter of fact, our definition of leadership is that leadership is facilitating the manifestation of greatness in others. It literally has nothing to do with you except for how much you're able to bring out of them the greatness that is within them. How are you able to help other people be better because you're around? That's the question. That's the test of a leader.
The leader is there to facilitate the greatness in others. Let's talk about that for a moment because it's very deep. A lot of people focuses on their own success, even like when they are trying to be a good leader, but that they don't really focus on the outcome of the empowering the other. So that makes it really a lousy leader. So let's talk about this for a little bit longer.
And to your point, they wind up getting there unintentionally, right? It's not that they want to be a lousy leader. They don't realize oftentimes that focusing on just the mission, focusing on just the objective doesn't help you be a good leader. And that's mainly because of the way most people become leaders is we're really good professionals. Guess what your job is as a professional? Your job is to focus on the result. Your job is to make sure you're getting the job done regardless of all the external things. It doesn't matter if your cousin is sick or if your mom has to call you and wants to get something. It doesn't matter if it's raining outside, if it's snowing outside. It doesn't matter if the other group members in your group don't do their part of the project. You are the go-to person because you get stuff done. Right? And that's who generally rises to leadership, because what happens is you become a great professional by measuring your emotions and making sure you can show up consistently and making sure that you eliminate as many distractions as possible from you doing that. And then what happens is people say, hey, you're so great at doing your job. How about you take these 4, 5, 10, 20 mediocre people and you help them be better at doing this job, because we need a leader in this space because they need to be better and you're really good. So how about you do that? The problem is when you get into that position, you don't have any of the skills to make them good at what they do because you've been spending your entire professional career making you good at what you do. Now, if they're just like you, then yeah, that's where you get lucky and you get a whole bunch of people that are just like you. And all you have to do is give them tips and tricks and they do it. And then boom, they increase. But most often what happens is you get a bunch of people that aren't like you and you have no idea how to help them be better. Right. And that's to the point that I was making earlier. That's why so many leaders are suffering, because now you're in the point where you can't really say, I don't know how to do it, because you're already in charge. You can't ask for help. You can't say, hey, can I get some coaching? Hey, can I get some training? Because now you look weak. Now you look like maybe we made a wrong decision by putting you in that seat. Right. And so people sit in this limbo. But the whole idea of leadership, right? One of my favorite quotes is from the Tao Te Ching. Right. It's a Taoist old Chinese philosophical text that says, and the author, Lao Tzu, he says it this way. He says, the greatest leaders, people barely know they exist. When their task is accomplished, when their job is done, the people say, we did it ourselves. That's legacy leadership. That's the idea that we're trying to work towards. You're trying to work towards the point where you're working yourself out of a job. You're working to help people to be good enough that they don't need you.
Yes, that's the ultimate goal, to let them shine and for them to be self-sufficient. Awesome. Can you walk us through what it looks like to apply the right strategies in the right order? Because that's
Hmm.
very key as well, right?
Yes,
For business
yes,
growth.
definitely for business growth. But and even like when we talk about it in thriving in chaos, it's really looking at how do you again master your time first. These strategies are leadership strategies. How do you help other people? But the way you do them is by mastering them with yourself first. So right, we started off with defining success. The next thing that we have to do is once we have success, a lot of times what happens is people get overwhelmed by their purpose, by their mission, by the amazing things that we can accomplish, right? We see an entire life, right? And as Bill Gates has said before, where we often overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can accomplish in 5. And so we try to do everything right now instead of understanding that there's a time and a place for everything along the way. And so one of the people that I really look up to, Patrick Bet-David, he has a book called Your Next 5 Moves. And in that book, he talks about how, chess masters, the average, grandmaster in chess can look 20, 25 moves ahead in a game, right? And even, decent chess players can play 5 to 10 moves ahead in a game, right? You can see the next 5 or 10 moves. But it doesn't matter how far ahead you can see if you start playing the moves out of order. If a grandmaster in chess plays move 20 and he's supposed to play move 2, he's going to mess up that entire strategy and he's going to look like an amateur. He's going to look like a novice, right? And it's so important that we as leaders understand that if we are trying to do certain things, we have to align our moves so that they actually build upon one another instead of so that they're moving in contradiction to each other. And that's a really important piece. You can't just go from knowing what you want to do to then doing it. You got to strategize. You got to plan. You got to produce. You got to sit and spend some time thinking about how everything flows together. Now, and you also have to give yourself grace because you know that you're not going to know everything and how everything works out. You're probably going to know the next couple of moves, but you want to make sure that you have those next couple of moves really locked in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very key. Speaking of books and inspiration, let's talk about yours. You're a best-selling author of the Legacy Leader series. The book number 1 is about thriving in chaos, and the number 2 is why can't people just do their jobs. Let's talk about those 2 books. What inspired you and what is the message?
Yeah. No, so one of the funny things about that series, so I wrote, why can't people just do their jobs first? And the reason that I wrote it was because I got that question a lot from leaders, right? Like a lot of the frustration that leaders have is, why is it that I've got to do so much? Why is it that I've got to remind people? Why is it I got to keep coming back and doing all this stuff? Why can't people just do their jobs? And really, like we talked about, that's that frustration from the professional, the doer, who's now got to be an empowerer, right? A facilitator. And that book was really designed to help leaders understand how to move from that doer mentality to that empowerer into that engagement mentality. How do you get people to want to do their jobs? How do you get people to understand what their job is so that they can innovate, so that they can step outside of the small little boxes that they have? How do you understand that most people are walking around in fear of messing up? And so as a leader, part of your job is to create psychological safety around failure. That's not catastrophic failure. Nobody's getting fired for this failure. But what we know as leaders is that a lot of the things that we accomplish are based on innovations, and that innovation is an iterative process. It's a bunch of failures till you figure out what works, right? So that was the first book. And then when I started training leaders on that, what I realized was a lot of leaders are in the positions that they're in, but they don't have the time that they need to really think through a lot of this work and do a lot of the pre-planning that's necessary. And the reason they don't have that time is because they haven't mastered their time. So they're constantly running around managing everybody else's priorities instead of being able to be focused and be diligent about their day, right? If you remember my story, I was sitting there working hard. And my main priorities, my wife and my kids, were not being able to fit into my day because of other things that I was doing. I had that same problem. So Thriving in Chaos, that's the book you see right over my shoulder there. Thriving in Chaos was written to really help leaders to figure out how to master their time. How do you get more done in less time? Right? But still manifest exactly what you're supposed to be manifesting, right? In that book, one of the things that we talk about, which is why I love your show, right, is success habits. And the fact that 40 to 50% of the decisions that we make in a day are habitual. We don't even think about them, right? Like, nobody ever thinks about, which hand am I going to brush my teeth with this morning, right? It's just a habit. You do it naturally. If you're brushing your hair, if you're doing whatever, you just go boom and you knock it out. Everybody's had that experience where you've been on your way home from work and you were going to stop at the store, right? You're like, yes, I got to stop at the store. I got to get some milk. I get some eggs or whatever it is. And then you get in the car, you start driving, you get a call and you're talking. And then you wind up in your driveway and you're like, wait a minute. I was supposed to go to the store, right? How did you get home? Your body was on autopilot and the habit drove you home, right? What if you could create success habits that made you make the decisions that would make you successful all the time, right? That's what Thriving in Chaos is really about. How to build a program so that you could successfully conduct your day and make it so that when you're making your decisions throughout the day, you're always prioritizing the things that are really in alignment with your purpose, the things that are really in alignment with what you've decided is your work-life harmony mix, right? So that's where Thriving in Chaos came from. And then we just published our third book, which is Courageous Communication. And so this book, one of the things that we found that a lot of people struggle with is having those high stakes conversations, right? Especially when you got to tell somebody that you want them to change their behavior, when you got to tell a leader, somebody that has different rank than you do, or somebody that is, maybe your boss, that you don't really like what they're doing, or what they're doing is not going to necessarily get them what they want. And so we wrote Courageous Communication to really help leaders understand that you don't have to be in charge to have influence, and that you can communicate with people and you can make change happen no matter where you are if you can figure out how to connect with people. And so we talk about 5 core strategies that allow you to connect with anybody and to build win-win scenarios.
I love it. Very interesting topics of your books, especially. Well, I would like to go back to the previous conversation about success habits, as you called it, right? You know, the name of this show is Happiness by Habit, and we are big about habits. So I would love to ask you whether some success or habits that you would recommend and that people can implement today to be closer to being successful.
Yeah, one of the success habits that I think is so important is a habit that I call email triage. All right. And so if you've ever been to the doctor, especially emergency room, you know that there's a nurse that comes in and they get all of your vitals and they figure out what's going on, and then they sit you over in the waiting room and they're like, the doctor will be with you shortly, right? And sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 3 hours, depending on what's going on. That process is them deciding what's the most important things that they need to do with limited time. And so many times I've seen leaders that their email drives their day, right? Based on what's coming in, they're constantly trying to respond to stuff right away. And what I teach my students is, what you want to be able to do is you want to take back control of your day. And our email triage method, there's a couple of basic things, right? First of all, you've got to know who are the people that can interrupt your day, right? You set up who are the most important people. I remember for me, when I started doing this, and it changes depending on what I'm doing. And right now I run my own business. So the list of people who can interrupt my day is a lot different than it was when I was a company commander, right? But when I first did this as a company commander, I had about 4 people that could interrupt my day. Now my kids were little, so technically they would never contact daddy. It was always my wife that was going to be contacting me, even if it was for my kids. So my wife was one of the people that was on that list. The other 3 people that were on that list were my boss, my boss's number 2, which was the executive officer of our battalion. So my boss was the battalion commander, the executive officer of the battalion, and then my boss's boss, who was the commanding general for the base. If one of those 3 people called me or came into my office, then I would need to drop whatever I was doing and deal with what they were talking about. If my wife called me or had an emergency at the home, then I would need to drop whatever I was doing and rearrange my day. Anybody else that was asking me to do something, they didn't need to interrupt my day, because I had already decided that there were certain things that were extremely important for me to get done, that were in connection with my week, that were in connection with my month, that were in connection with my quarter. And now, only if the actual item is not just urgent, but important enough for it to interrupt my day, does it even get thought about. But most everybody, they wouldn't have anything like that, because I've done a significant amount of planning. I knew that. So I could go through my day, and in the morning I would wake up, I would take a half hour in the morning and I would go through all my emails, right? Now there requires some pre-planning. So you have your plan of your day already. Now you go through your emails to see, is there anything that needs to get added to your plan of the day before you start the day? This is the first triage moment, right? And this is the most important triage moment, because this is the one where your day can actually change. Now, I would do that about 8 o'clock in the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, after that, I shut my email down and I'm not checking it again till noon. I'm working on all the stuff that I said is important during the day until noon. Now at noon, I'm getting ready to go to lunch. So I would go ahead and I would check my email again to see if anything came through in those hours that would need to get added to my day. If there was nothing that was so important and so urgent that it needed to get out of my day, I shut my email back down and I waited until I checked it again at the end of the day. Now, at the end of the day, once I had checked everything, now I can say all of the stuff that came in, where do I want to put it? Is it going to go on the next day? Is it going to go on the next week? Whatever. And I can respond to all those people. Hey, I'll get you an answer by Tuesday. I'll get you an answer by Friday. I'll get you an answer by next week. I can give them the times that those things need to get done by. And so now I've been able to take away the urgency of emails. Because, and for me, I figured this out, and I don't know if you've had this experience before, but I figured it out because I realized that the voice that I had in my head that was telling me that people were waiting for me to send them an email right now, I figured out that voice was wrong. Like, I was not actually really good at reading people's minds like I thought I was. And I figured it out because I remember people would shoot me emails, and I always wanted to respond as quickly as possible, 24 hours or earlier, right? And what would happen is somebody would send me an email saying, hey, I need this as soon as you can get it to me. And then I would have a question about the thing that they needed so that I could give them what they wanted. And I would fire back the question, hey, I need to know XYZ so that I can give you that. 1 day goes by, 2 days go by, 3 days go by.
Urgent.
Right? It must not have been that urgent if you're not sitting there checking to see if you got emails from me. Right? It took me a couple of times before I figured it out, but I was like, oh, it's not as urgent as people are making it seem. And so I stopped chasing after this false urgency. When I started telling people when I would get stuff to them, you know what would happen? Amazingly, people were like, oh, Tuesday is great. No problem. Well, Friday, no problem. That sounds great. As long as you can get it to me by Monday, everything is good. And I started realizing that I had a lot more time to get things done than I originally thought that I did. And I didn't have to shift my schedule all around. So that's one habit. The email triage is one thing that I would highly recommend people learn how to do. And there's a video that we have. Again, if anybody watching wants to learn about that a little bit more in depth, we've got a video series. You can just shoot us an email at support@TLLCG and we can get it to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And speaking of things that you have for the audience, I would love to know if you can share how can the audience get in contact with you and what gifts you have for them.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yes.
So I understand, right? We talk about defining success is the principal kind of habit that you want to be able to understand. You got to know where you're going. Otherwise, any way will do, right?
Right.
But I also know that a lot of people struggle with that. We haven't learned really how to define success. What we have grown up figuring out is how to articulate success that is acceptable to others, right? If you remember, everybody had this when they were a kid, right? You get that question, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And if you say something like, I want to play in the NFL, or I want to be in the NBA, or I want to be a dancer, or I want to be a singer, everybody goes, well, that's really nice, but what are you going to do if that doesn't work out? Right? Everybody figures out really quickly that if you say what you want and it's not acceptable, people will try to steer you in a different direction. But if you say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a dentist, I want to be an engineer, everybody's like, oh, that's amazing. Yes, go ahead. That's great. And you figure this out when you're young. And then we go to school, and guess what? They don't ask us what classes we want to take. We get told what classes we have to take, and we get told what an A is. And then we go to college, and it's the same thing. You get to pick your major, but once you pick your major, they tell you exactly what classes you have to take in order to graduate with that degree. And when you go to work in the professional world, it's the same thing. So many people struggle actually knowing what makes their heart sing. What is their passion? What is their purpose? And so we created an activity, a self-reflection tool to help people learn how to define success for themselves, to really tap in and to hear that inner voice and to get in touch with their inner selves and know what the purpose is that they are here. What does success for their life mean? Because we believe that if you walk in alignment with your definition of success for your life, then your life, you can move from scarcity to abundance. You then move from the hard way to the easy way. You move from surviving to thriving. And so that's one of the things, and there'll be a link in the show notes that people can click. If you just click on that, we can get you the activity, the self-reflection tool. That's a free gift of ours to your clients. And what also comes with that, if you remember, we talked about those difficult conversations.
Yes.
There's 5 strategies that we talk about in this book, and we know that it's yes, a lot of people can kind of learn from the book and everything, but Napoleon Hill said it this way. He said, knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. Right? And so one of the things that we did is we created a primer to help you apply the strategies that we talk about in the book. And so there's a series of questions that you can ask yourself. There's internal questions that you need to kind of go through as you're getting ready to have this conversation to know that the conversation is going to be well for you. But then there's also a series of external questions that you can ask your conversation partner to help facilitate a better conversation so that you can get to that win-win scenario at the end. And so we created that primer. That's another free thing that if people click the link, they can get access to.
Oh, wonderful. I love it. Those are really useful and fun tools. Thank you for sharing those, Robert.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So I know we can still talking for a long time because the conversation is so interesting and I have enjoyed it very much. Let's wrap up with a message. What is a good takeaway you would like the audience to have after this conversation?
Yeah. So for me, the big thing that we believe at Legacy is that everybody is here for a reason. That when you wake up every morning, we take breath into your lungs, that's not an accident. There's a purpose for you being on this planet. And our goal is to help you to manifest your greatness, to help you to be the best that you can be. Now, I will admit that it is a selfish goal. Yes, I want you to be good for you, but more importantly, I know that you being the best that you can be is better for the world. That means it's better for all the rest of us. And so there's a couple of things that I want you to think about and take away from this. The first thing that we say, know that if you want a community, if you need, some people to talk to, something like that, one of the things that we do as a service to the world is a Legacy Builders Roundtable. It's an event that we do twice a month, and all you have to do is register, and you can get in. And there's other people that feel a calling, feel like they're destined for more, they're destined for greatness, that we invite you all to come to. All you have to do is reach out to us at our email support@tllcg.com, and you can get registered for that. And that's a place where you can get some coaching, some masterminding, some camaraderie with other people who feel that same call and feel that loneliness that you feel sometimes when you have a calling on your life and you can't really talk to other people about it because they don't really understand, right? They don't understand why you're not happy that you're already successful and you're already high achieving. You've already done these things. Why can't you just be content? Why isn't it enough? And it's not that it's not enough for you. It's that you're called to more. So if that's something that's interesting to you, reach out to our team and we can get you registered for our Legacy Builders Roundtable. But I want to leave everybody with this. Remember to live every day like it's on purpose and in alignment with your purpose because you are destined for greatness.
I love that. Thank you. What a way to close the episode with that phrase, Robert. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation with you, and I'm sure our audience also is going to take some actions on these topics that are very, very relevant for us.
Yes.
Thank you for reminding us that chaos isn't the end. It's often just the beginning of something greater.
Yes.
If you're listening right now and feeling like your leadership journey is messy, know this, you're not alone. And with the right mindset and mentorship, clarity is absolutely possible. Thank you very much for your time. And to connect with Robert, yes, we're going to put the website here so you can do that and check out the links in the show notes. That's where we will put them. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.
You do the same.
All righty. Take care. Bye.